Okay, on this, I'm going to run through and give you some basic setups, what's in this particular build, what I have added into it. The first part we're going to have here is you got a random splash screen that loads on the very front end. So you may notice some different videos will play at the very beginning of boot up. It adds 15, 20 seconds. Adds 15 to 20 seconds to the boot up, but it's this kind of neat little feature at the front end of it, and it will pick randomly one of those from that folder. You can go in if you have a file manager in another PC. You can go in and remove those, and you would make your boot up a little bit quicker. But I think it's just a cool added little effect, and some of the videos are pretty neat. So the first thing it's doing there when it first boots up, it's looking through and seeing if there's any new games added, that kind of stuff. So that first little splash screen. So I'm going to go through some of the settings and what's on this card, and then I'll go through the systems. So I'm going to hit the start button, or the start button. We'll go here to, let's go down here to system settings. Take a look at what is on this. This is Batocera 39 running on a 128 gig micro SD card. You got this is basically the space that you're able to use for games and ROMs and stuff like that. This is basically the OS, actually Batocera itself is on this file. So this folder here, you can see I'm using 91% of the space. So you could add a few more games to it, depending on the size of them, but you would want to, if you add too many games, you'd probably want to remove some to add to it. So again, it's a 128 gig card total, and running, this is a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus and a custom Mega Pi case that it looks like a Sega Genesis. So we'll back out of this. We have our regions, simple stuff. If you get it and you don't have audio on your TV, this is where you're going to want to change some of these audio outputs. Simply just hit the X button or the south button, whatever you want to call that on the controller, and you can change one of those settings. So I'm going to back out of this, and we're going to go ahead and let's take a look at what games are on this system. Let's see, let me start here at the collections. So we have the all games, which is 8,696 are on here. If we hit the enter button, this is the detailed option. So you're going to see the game name on the list on the left. On the right, we're going to have a box art, and then a video snap will play to kind of give you it's kind of a cool image of it. So we have those, all those kind of things. You can see it has some details about the game maker, what type of game it is, how many stars that the game has from other players. You can set your own to that. Favorites. This is going to be favorites folder, and this is going to be things that you play a lot. Now I have added some favorites just to make it a little bit easier, so you'd have some items in here. If you don't like a certain game and you want to get rid of it, it's as simple as holding the West button. So I'm going to hold it down, and now that is gone. So hold the West button. Now down here, this is incorrect. These two buttons are swapped. It's not the West button actually does these things. The North button does these things. You can see South will launch the game as well as give you some game options. So that is kind of cool that it gives you this as a little guide. Last played. So this will be the list of games that you've played. And I can't remember how many it lists in here, but it gives you a list of them. These are games that I tested to make sure they were running all right. Daphne was an arcade machine that had the very first laser disc arcade game. Cost you about $1 to play it back in the day, but this does have the two main Laserdisc games, which were Space Ace and Dragon Slayer, both of them classic games. Keep in mind, these do take about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes to load, because they have to load the all the video into the game. Now I'm moving it so it won't play the video snap. So they work, but they just take some time to load on the front end. MAME. I'll say MAME and FB Neo, which is Final Burn, are both arcade games. They're split up between the two systems here. We got 376 games are considered MAME, and 1,649 are considered Final Burn. But again, these are going to be arcade games. Here you got your 1941, 1942. If you hold down on the right trigger when you're, or maybe it's the, oops, wrong way. So I'm pushing down, and then if I hold the shoulder button, you can race through it. So that's how you can go through and make it a little bit quicker. And again, you stop at something, and get a video snap. So 1,600 there. We got Atari 2600, 644 games there. Let's see those. Atari 5200, there's 72 games there. Atari ST, which is like a computer. Atari's a computer. It's got 400 games in here. Some of them will work fine with a controller. Some you really need a keyboard. So I stuck them in there. They're very small size. They don't take up much room, and so I just tossed it in there. Just check them out. You can play them if you want, but it's just kind of an added feature, but didn't take up much space. Atari 7800, we have 58 games. Again, this was Atari's third console release. Didn't do very well because at that time we were running issues with chips. ColecoVision, 146 games, so you got a lot of ColecoVision in here. This is another classic system. Commodore 64, you only got 2. This is because I was just testing if Commodore would work, and I got it working, so just stuck it in there. Scum VD, or VD, VM, this is floppy disk or CD games back in the day ran on PCs. It does work here on the Raspberry Pi, but just have them in there just for nostalgia reasons. We've got Intellivision, got 137 games there. Vectrex, which was a system, was only for sale for about a year. It was a self-contained monitor and the game plugged in the side. This is actually a classic system. I have actually one of these. Very cool. Vector graphics, nothing fancy with it, but this was one of the first systems that had its own monitor. You didn't need to use the old TV. And this is like I want to say this was 1981, 82 up there, yeah, so this was early on. TurboGrafx 16, we got 341 games in there. TurboGrafx CD, so it's just added the CD, so you're going to get a little bit better graphics, but more for the sound in a lot of these systems, and these CD games didn't do real well, but they were kind of a bump up from just the 16-bit. Got Super Graphics, a few games there. What did I say? So it was like 5? Yeah, 5. Nintendo, 864 games there. Basically this is the whole collection of Nintendo. Super Nintendo, full collection of that, 787 games there. Nintendo 64, got 303 games in there. Most of these, I haven't ran into any that didn't run. Nintendo 64 is kind of at the some of that really hard graphics might struggle with the Raspberry Pi 3B, but for all my testing, I didn't have any issues. Game Boy Color, 535. Game Boy Advanced, 252. Ports, which were, these are games like this is Doom and Doom 2. They're PC games that were ported over to this system. You also have OD Commander, which is like a file manager. You can go in and actually look at the files. So if you wanted to go through and say you wanted to get rid of the splash screen, you could go into where the splash screen folder, and you could actually delete those splashes and you wouldn't see those. But it's just a little file manager. It works okay. Not the best. I'd rather use a PC if I'm going to be doing stuff on it. Psy games, just some PC type games. Thomas Wave, arcade games here. These were all arcade systems. So you probably It was forever loud. Sega, the Sega 1000, which was very short-lived. A little bit better graphics. They were 1983, yeah. You got the Master System, 342 games of the Master System, so Sega's first system. And then we have Genesis, which was the 16-bit Goliath of a machine. Did great graphics, but you got this is when Sonic Hedgehog came out, and some of those Aladdin was on here. Alex the Kid was real popular. Game Gear, a handheld system by Sega. Got 249 games there. Sega CD, which was basically the Sega Genesis with CD sound. It does a little bit on the graphics part, but it was more for the sound quality in the music that was added to it. 11 games on that. Again, it's not a huge library for the Sega CD. Dreamcast. So we got Dreamcast. I got 7 games now. Dreamcast, Saturn's. A lot of those games start to get real big, so you have to be kind of careful on how many I added to that. Now these games all run. The more popular Dreamcast games. And all these will run on the Raspberry Pi 3B. Some of the super heavy Dreamcast games will struggle with this system, so that's why I had to choose on what I wanted to add to this system to run well. Naomi arcade games. So I got all kinds of arcade games in here. This was a Naomi system. What did I say? That was 26 of those. Neo Geo. This was a high dollar home arcade system. I think the system would cost you like $800 back in the day, and every game cost you $200 to $250 a piece. And this is 1990, so that was some money. Neo Geo was an arcade system, and they basically ported over the exact arcade game to people to have at home. A lot of your Art of Fighting, those are in King of Fighters, I think is in here. Those were all real big Neo Geo games. PlayStation. So we got PlayStation in here. I got 43 of those. This is PlayStation 1. Now, PlayStation starts to get where games can be anywhere from 500 megabytes to a couple gigs. So this is where you got to be careful on what you add to this list. So all these, you should have all the popular games. Anything with a star, that is anything that I've added to the favorites. So that's why that's on there. So again, you can add your own favorites or remove some of those. PSP, 301 games on that. And this is going to be PSP games as well as PlayStation Mini. So we're going to have, they're both in there. And I can't remember. Yeah, I didn't put God of War on here because God of War needs, for PSP, needs a little bit more than what the Raspberry Pi 3B will run. You need something more closer to the Pi 5 or some of those items to run God of War. But all these games will run just fine. So let's try to keep the things that actually ran. So again, we're back here. Let's go into the settings. Sound systems. This is the main volume. We can turn that up or down, as well as the music. The music, you can add more music to the folder. There's a music folder if you go into the file manager, and you can add any music that you want, get rid of the ones that are there, and have that customized to what you want in there. So you can have your favorite jams playing on it. And the music will go off when you start a game, and I think you can, there's a setting if you want to have the music playing all the time, and I can't find that right off the top of my head. I don't remember, but there is a setting that will play music throughout your gameplay if you're wanting to have that playing. Let's go into the user interface. So I'm running ES Theme Carbon, but if we go into the configuration, we can change some of the way that it looks. So game settings is on detailed. If you go to grid, here's another grid, so I'm going to hit that, and now I'm going to hit the east button, which is back, and we'll go in back up again, and then let me go into a system. So let's well, I guess I can go to all games, and you're gonna see it looks different. See, now we have the boxed art that you can kind of see that instead of it being the detailed. Oops, let's hit let's go back into user. Again, this is all in what you want, how you want it to look. We can just do the content. I think this is like boxes, like the art. So I'm not mistaken, this is like the art for each thing. Yeah. So you have the art, and if you leave it, it should play the video snap. It gives you some information about the game. So instead of having detailed, it just looks a little bit different. And again, you just got to figure out what aesthetically works for you. Some things will load, like if you went to basic, it loads even quicker, but it gives no information. So you can mess around with this. It doesn't hurt to change the layout. Again, some of the more heavier, more graphics will, I don't want to say slow the device down, but it takes a little bit longer to load it as if you do the basic. Again, more settings that you can change for this system for you. I'm gonna hit the gray, and we'll hit back. Yeah, see, now we have a kind of a grayish look instead of the blue that was on there. Network, so you're going to want to add this to your Wi-Fi if you're planning on doing some file manager, and you can click that and go in there and add it. You can also run Ethernet. One thing to keep in mind is if you use the Ethernet cord, it is a bitch to get the Ethernet cord back out. You actually kind of have to almost take the case apart, which is only 5 screws at the bottom, but to get the Ethernet cord out, you will need to do that. But if you're just going to put the Ethernet cord in and leave it, then you're fine. But Wi-Fi does work fine, so that's understanding of that. Game collection. So if there are games that you're never going to play, like I'm never going to play Daphne, you can turn it off and you will not see that on the list. So I can go for any of these systems in here. Turn them off, you won't see them. Automatic game collections, these are other options. You can turn off the last played or favorites, or turn on some of these others. So we've got lots to choose from. You can create your own collection, so if there's certain ones that you want to create, you can do that. System settings. Let me show you a couple things on system settings. No, I'm wrong ones. Oops. Game settings. Under game settings, changing things for a system, you can make edits to a system. So let's say your main games, they're not running well under whatever emulator that it's on there. You can actually go in and we can change what emulator plays the game. Right now it's on auto, but you can change it, and this would change it for any game that's in using MAME. So that's a neat feature. It's more for, not for MAME as much as when you get into sometimes Nintendo 64 can be kind of wonky, or the Thomas Wave, sometimes it can be picky, and I want to say Dreamcast can sometimes be picky about what it thinks. Also, we can change decorations, which is, for the most part, it's the bezels, which is this here. So when you go into a Nintendo game, it'll say Nintendo. It actually has different themes. You can pick any of these different themes, and they will load for the system. Now, since we're in, not even sure which system we're in, whatever system we were in, it would have changed. It could have changed it for that particular system. But this is a neat thing, that if you want to make edits to all the games in your Nintendo 64, you go in and change the look in the emulator. Nintendo 64 will not put in bezels. I've tried 5 different bezels, and I cannot get it to run bezels, so they will not have bezels in Nintendo 64. Everything else, bezels work just great. Only Nintendo 64 for some reason. So let me go out of that. One other thing I'll show you before I end this, and that is if a particular game, you want to make edits to a particular game. So I'm going to long hold on the X button, the south button, and it brings up this menu, and we can make edits to just this game. We can go in and change the emulator, or well, I guess Final Burn only has one emulator. Usually we would see an emulator change too. So let me see, what about this one? Go into here. Yeah, so you can see if I hit enter, I can change which emulator this one game works. So the other setting I showed you was when you wanted to change it for all games within MAME. This would be if you want to change the emulator or the settings for this one game. Same thing with video mode, which is basically the like what kind of resolution you're running, and then this would be the size of the screen, so you can make the screen bigger or smaller. Sometimes you have to shrink the screen a little bit on some games to make it fit. This would be your bezel. So all this stuff is for just this one game. So it's a nice nice feature to be able to change things within the one game. Delete, and you want to delete the game, you can. So the other item is your saves, and so let me back out. And I don't think I have anything. I think let's go to my favorites. I think I added. Come here. I'm pushing left and right. Let's go to Zelda, and I'm gonna hit the. It'll be the West button. If I had saved games, you would see some saves in here. So I guess I deleted the ones that I had. I did have some saves at one point. So you can have saved games in it. Most systems will save as the console should have. But if you want to create your own saves, let's say if you're playing arcade games, they don't have save. So you could actually create a save for that particular, right where you're at. And you'll be able to see that by hitting the West button. Because like I said, these two are backwards, so you'd actually hit West, and you'd be able to. Yeah, we don't have it, so that's saves if you're wanting to save it. If the system doesn't, most of the time, like I said, Nintendo 64 and stuff, you'll see when you play a game, it'll say, "Hey, do you want to create a save?" You say, "Yeah," and it just creates a file for it, so you don't need to mess with it. So hopefully you understand all this stuff. It kind of gives you a rundown of what this system offers, and again. It's 128 gig Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. All this stuff will run pretty good. Like I said, the only thing I had an issue with was some of the Atari ST games, which is a computer game. But it's in there. It's not a big size. And hopefully you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, you can always hit me up. Talk to you later.